Hi, I'm Sam Candy. Welcome to Sustain Talks. Today I'm joined by Sarah Magnier Ashton, Head of Culture and CSR at Vaultex UK. I came across Vaultex UK's ESG report and it was fascinating. I thought it'd be really great to share more about their journey and what being a business that does good looks like. So hello, Sarah, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Really good. It's great to have you here and I'm excited to share your journey. I thought it was so great when I first met you and spoke to you and you shared a bit more about the insight into the report and how it all started in your journey. So why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about you and Vaultex and who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so as you say, I'm Head of Culture and CSR at Vaultex UK at the moment. So basically what that means is I oversee anything CSR related, sustainability, from the environment side to social mobility, match funding, all that good stuff. Also internal communications and employee engagement. So give you a bit of background about Vaultex, because it's one of those where people haven't necessarily heard of it, but then when they realize it exists, like, oh, didn't even know that that was a thing. So Vaultex was founded in 2007 as a joint venture between Barclays and HSBC, and we're a cash processing company. So what that means is we basically receive any cash that goes through the cash cycle. We filter out any dirty, any ripped, so any damaged notes. So basically when you get your cash in your hand, you've got confidence that that's real, it's not counterfeit, it can be used, so that you don't get cash in your hand that you can't go into a shop and spend. And not a lot of people know that that's even a requirement of the cash cycle, but it is, and that's our role within it. So we work very closely with things like the Bank of England, the Royal Mint, to push out notes like the polymers and the new pound coins that you might have seen recently.
Yeah, it's so funny. Since I met you, I've just explained that to so many people talking about you. I found it really fascinating. And what about your position? You've been there for quite some time, haven't you?
Yeah, so I'm coming up to 7 years with Vaultex now. So yeah. I've been very lucky on my journey with Vaultex. I've been able to work my way up through the organisation, so got a really good understanding of what it means to have sustainability within that cash cycle and just how important it is so that we can keep people having access to cash. In a world where the connectless kind of payments are coming to the fore, really. So, we are declining as an industry, but we need to keep cash available for those people that it means so much to.
And within your business, what does sustainability and being a responsible business mean?
So, I think that recognising our responsibility and boosting sustainability, it really all comes back to our values as a company. So we've got 3 very simple company values at the core of our business that all our activity revolves around. So they are: we treat others how we expect to be treated, got a right first time approach, and we do what we say we will when we say we will. Yeah. So it's really, if you think about the concept of those values, it all drives into being a responsible business and doing the right thing. And it's our moral compass in a way, those values. Yeah. And it's something that's been a foundation that's really allowed our sustainability and responsibility to grow and strengthen. Yeah.
I mentioned before I came across you because I saw your ESG report, which you've just released. And I really enjoyed reading it and learning more about you. What's the bit that stood out most to you when going through it and doing it?
I don't think there was any one initiative that stood out. I think it was more the concept of everything we've done in recent years has been very much people driven. Yeah. So what I mean when I say that is that sometimes as people who work in sustainability and CSR, we get so hung up on the really big ticket things. So if you think about your infrastructure, you know, oh, well, we need to change all the lighting and it has to be kind of occupancy based, and, you know, we have to look at the consumption element of that. And yes, absolutely we do, and we have. But when you really get into it, what's the things that matter to your people on a day-to-day basis? Because they want to see, you know, there's so much research done at the moment about if people are stayed in a role, it's because they really valued that kind of, those, you know, those moral values I was saying, they really value that. And what's your company doing to drive that sustainability? Well, our Vaultex people can say, well, they involved me, you know, they asked me. And even though those changes can sometimes be so small, they can make those biggest impacts, you know, in things like plastic reduction and your consumption, because it's all about behaviour change. And if that's coming up through all the levels of the organisation, then you're far more likely to have that success than top down. So I think in writing the ESG report, it was very much how successful that's been, because it's become ingrained in all our initiatives. So no matter what we do, we go back to, well, what do our people think first? And we'll drive the strategy from that, and it'll be a bottom-up approach. So I think that's what stood out for me. It was how reliant we've become on that, and that's great in my mind, because it shows that we're doing what our people want, essentially.
You're head of culture at Vaultex, and you know, so you must be very involved in the equality, diversity and inclusion strategy. And what does that entail at your business?
So equality and diversity, it's something, that strategy is something that's, you know, it's always been there, but most recently we've had a bit of a rebrand of it, because again, it's that thing with reaching out to our people. We found that we were doing that more and more. And we also found that in recent years, obviously, we've seen some really big societal change in the areas of race, amongst many others. But that one specifically had such a profound effect on people, especially around the death of George Floyd. And we felt we really needed to, at that point, acknowledge the fact that this is really difficult for some of our people. It was such a harrowing thing to see on the news. It was so difficult to know how to respond to that, not only as a company, but as individuals. You know, what can you even say? And our colleagues who were most affected like that, it felt like they just had to carry on regardless, even though this huge thing is happening in the world and this huge movement. So one of the things we did at that point was our open forums. So we wanted to basically go out to people and say, okay, there's a lot of companies standing up right now in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. There's a lot of change happening. So how do we now, as a company, what would you expect us to do? What would you want us to do? How would you expect our strategies to change? Our policies, procedures? And it was just starting that conversation, really. And from that, we rebranded our strategy to what we call speak, stand, share and shape. So basically what that consists of is your 4 pillars, where you speak up about discrimination. If you see it happening, you call it out. There's a zero tolerance approach to it. There always has been, but developing that confidence in terms of being brave enough, I suppose, to stand up and call it. And then obviously stand. Where is it? Show us. Stand up for what's right. And that can be for anything, you know. Again, it goes back to our values. It's very much underpinned by that. And then share is, we need to share what our experiences are. So in order for me to understand your background, your heritage, you know, tell me about it. You know, where do you come from? What's your demographics? What's your heritage? What are you proud of? Also, have you experienced discrimination? what was that like? How did it feel? Because we just can't understand each other and make our societies more inclusive unless we do speak. But that can be really difficult, and that in itself can be a culture change, can't it? And you know, that can be a journey for people and companies. And then shaping is about saying, okay, well, this is where we are, this is where we want Vaultex to be, how do we get there? And you know, our people shaping the future of Vaultex. So I think how I'd describe it is, it's always going to be a work in progress in terms of where we are and where we want to get to, but we've started those conversations and people are starting to be braver in terms of coming to those open forums and saying, this is what I do like, this is what I don't, this is where I think we should be. And this, you know, we've done 2 rounds now, and there was like 104% increase, I think it was, in participation in those forums. So it just shows you start the conversation and that might feel really uncomfortable. And as a company as well as an employer, you might think, oh, I don't know about that. But it's just starting that conversation, and then people get braver and more confident, and you can deliver those quick wins for people.
It's a brave thing for a company to do as well, to, you know, that could have the reverse effect. So to do that and put yourselves out there to make an effort to try something different like that and have a strategy around it, I think that's really, really commendable. You mentioned those pillars. I also know that you have 5 pillars, the 5 E's that you work with. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So we break our CSR strategy down into 5 areas. So that's 5 E's. So we've got environment, engagement, employability, enterprise, and ethics. So these are basically a way of breaking down our stakeholder groups and making sure that we are targeting ourselves and holding ourselves accountable in each area. So what's really important for us in that is that we can have business owners. So for instance, in environment, who across the business is going to look at the waste management and the recycling, who's going to own that, be passionate about it, drive it, and get everyone else involved as well. You know, on the other side of the coin, who's going to look after the fundraising element, you know, who's going to make sure that we're volunteering and giving back. And that really works for us because you've embedded it across the business in all of these different groups. And you've already also, by doing the grassroots idea creation and, you know, getting people to feed into it, you've done the vertical integration as well. So it's all fully embedded. And the most important thing is all those people are so passionate about it. You know, they all have a stake in it. So it's not just your CSR function who is banging that drum and going, come on, let's, you know, let's make sure we're getting this right. It's people in pockets across the organisation, and they're all so passionate about driving that as well. So it's that's really worked for us so far. I think you can never stop, really. I think sustainability is everybody's job, and I think we are getting better and better at every person within the organisation having an impact on that, because we're setting up the CSR networks at the moment. So people might have diversity networks. We're doing that with CSR as well. But it's all about where you are on your journey, really. At the time we did the stakeholders, we weren't at the position where everybody across the organisation was really, really passionate. We just weren't there culturally. But now we are getting there. So it's just to show that over time, you might feel like, oh God, we're so far away from that. But honestly, it gets traction so quickly.
Yeah, and it's true what you say. You don't have to be the head of sustainability or the head of culture or the head of CSR within a business to get involved and to play that part. Didn't you have a story about something to do with your ways of reducing waste, how you engage with your staff? sure I remember something.
Yeah, so I think that's is that Green Path, I think, that you're alluding to?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so Green Path is my baby at the moment. I love it. So basically we got to a point in 2019 where we'd done these big changes. We put in so it's something called power perfector technology. So we've reduced our energy consumption hugely. We got all the big stuff like water saving taps, your occupancy lighting. We've got all of that stuff in, and we thought, right, what is next? And we couldn't think of anything big, and I think that's where we got stuck, and we plateaued a bit. And then there was some ideas coming up through the CSR networks and panel, which were really good, and we thought, why aren't we leveraging this, basically? So we started our Green Path competition. So this was about getting people's ideas and really boosting that grassroots strategy creation. So we launched a competition, and honestly the amount of ideas was just huge. And it was things that, as much as passionate as I am about it, and as much as I understand what Vaultex is and does and the processes, I'm not doing it day to day. And it's just those nuances in the processes that people really picked out, and it seems so obvious to them in terms of, why do we print that twice? Or why are the plastic bags this big? Why do we have those plastic bags actually? Little things like that. And it was a case of, we could then identify those and change them. Not only could we change them to reduce our impact, with plastic, improve our impact on the environment, we could also involve those people in terms of making that change, and that obviously boosts their engagement. They are upskilling themselves, and then we can take that up to an industry level as well. So I can take it to my meetings for the cash industry environmental charter, and I can say, look at this, isn't this great? Could you do it in your organisation? And we've got some people who, our cashiers, whose ideas have gone up to an industry level, which is just incredible. And they're like, oh my gosh, well, I can't believe that was my idea, and now they're doing it. So it's really going from strength to strength in terms of, we just keeping going. If the ideas keep going, then so do we. So it's been invaluable, honestly. It's just surprised us so much in terms of what our people's input to it. It's been brilliant.
And to be able to share that with an industry, we talk a lot about collaboration and taking out competition, and actually like sharing with competitors and giving ideas when it comes to being a sustainable business and a leader and a responsible business. It is really good to share your ideas with other people. I know that health and well-being plays a crucial part of at Vaultex. What tips could you give to other companies, and what kind of things do you do there?
So I'll try and do both at once. So I'd say the biggest thing is to assess, it might sound really obvious, but assess where you are on your journey with health and well-being so far. So for Vaultex, we had quite an extensive support package for both physical and mental well-being already. But in 2017, we saw quite a big uptick in mental well-being absence. So it was clear that we had to do something else in terms of supporting our people. Being completely candid, we weren't sure what that was at that time. So we knew we needed some kind of extra research support in that area. So we signed the Time to Change pledge, because that, for us at that time, it offered, we could do more research. it offered us support. So when you sign the Time to Change pledge, you can put forward an action plan of what you think you should be doing. But then there's professionals at the other end to kind of say, okay, have you thought about this? And, you know, I think you might have a gap here. So that's a process of assessing where you are on that path. And then what's the end goal of that? Where do you want to end up? You know, what support do you want to end up delivering for us? We do things like paid counselling now. And that's made more available to our people. It was something that we always did through our employee assistance line, but maybe not to the depth that we needed to.
Yeah.
And then there's things like support tools. So the way that we worked it, we signed the pledge and we had our action plan and we knew that that was great, that was what we were going to do. But it's not stopping when that's been implemented. So doing it and knowing that that's great and that's a good package for an employer to deliver is wonderful, but then having the feedback from the manager population was really key for us, because it's all well and good to put that support in place, but then our managers were coming back to say, okay, but what do I do in this specific instance? You know, if someone is in crisis, what do I do there? So that was when we went back to the drawing board a bit and said, okay, well, we need to help write something that is more step by step. If someone comes to you in crisis, this is what you say, this is what you do, this is where you signpost to. And then they tried that out, that was really good, but they still felt a little bit kind of unprepared for that. It's a difficult situation to be in, it really is. So then it was, okay, well, we need to train some people to really handle those situations, because what we didn't want was our managers to become affected by what's going on themselves. So that was when we put in mental health first aiders. So I think the biggest takeaway from that is just keeping that cycle going. Like, we've put this in, did it work, did it not, how, what's next for you? And just keeping it going so that you know that you're putting your investments in the right places, rather than just doing what you have been told would be a good thing to do and then accepting that it's good without asking and concentrating that effort rather than ticking a box per se.
That must have really helped you through over the last few years with COVID, because mental health has been one of the key issues with, you know, some people working from home, or the difference in circumstances and furloughs and things like that. So, you know, it must have really sort of set you ahead to already have things in place to be able to deal with that.
That's it. And it's, again, with everything that we're kind of talking about today, it's really people having the trust to come forward with their opinions and suggestions and knowing that they'll be listened to. So even if, you know, obviously with all of this kind of grassroots strategy creation that we're doing, there are times when the answer will be no, we can't do that. And I think that's maybe what in the past we've shied away from, what other companies shy away from. No one wants to say no, but as long as people are kept involved and talked to honestly and given the reasons for that, then there's been no issues with that. So I think as much as there's a fee around it, it's very useful and very worth doing, as long as you can keep that communication going.
You've been on this sustainability and socially responsible journey for a while. Have there been any challenges that you found throughout?
I mean, there's always challenges with everything. I think one of the biggest ones that we encountered was with the embedding of the process. So we talked about it a little bit earlier in terms of getting people across the organisation to buy in to the sustainability strategy. And the way we overcome that was, rather than picking out people to own each area, it was letting them volunteer. So I think sometimes the challenge we had in the past was we'd choose the account owners. So for each of those 5 E's, so environment, we choose the people that seemed most obvious. So what I mean by that is you might have, so say an area of the organisation owns the recycling relationship. Well, they should be accountable for that target. They're not necessarily the most kind of invested people in it. They may own the relationship, but maybe there's people throughout the organisation, different levels, who want to support that. So they might want to support the supplier relationship owner in terms of driving some activities in sites. How get them involved in it then? There's no kind of, just because you've got your hierarchy, it doesn't mean that it has to be this person up here that owns it. It can be anyone. As long as they've got the passion and the drive to do it, let them do it. And that was kind of where we went a bit wrong initially, I think. We were like, well, it should be them. No, it doesn't necessarily need to be. You know, you've got this person over here who's doing great work. It might not be their core role. It doesn't mean that they can't be involved. So I think that was probably one of our biggest learning points. But it's just a case of, you know, when we opened it up more, it was just much more successful. And now I feel like we're in a position where everyone's just really passionate about it that's involved, which is great.
Yeah, I can't commend you enough. You've done such a great job, and it obviously is something that you are so passionate about, your company is so passionate about. I've left a little bit off because I'm pleased to say that you're going to be speaking at the Responsible Futures Conference, and we are going to be sharing a little bit more about that in the future. So for now, I just wanted to thank you so much for your time, for sharing your journey and your experience. I know so many people are going to get so much value from this, and keep doing the great work. I look forward to seeing what's coming in the future.
Oh, thanks. It's been great to speak to you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, likewise. Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.